Good morning. Welcome to IFPA's 2020 Industry Insights, community publishing webcasts brought to you by the Board of Directors of the Independent Free Papers of America. My name's Bob Munn, and with the support of the IFPA Board of Directors, today begins our 6th year of 2020 webinars, the community publishing industry's premier webcast training series. Now, we're gonna hold off on the previews of future 2020 sessions until the end because apparently you and I have money that's been hiding in plain sight, and we have a lady waiting in the green room who wants to show us where to find it. Michelle and I have been talking for a couple of years about doing a session like this. Now, 2 years ago, I don't think we could have pulled 10 people. Today, we're looking at one of the top pre-registrations I've seen for a product topic in the 5 years that we've been doing this. Before I bring her out here, I'm going to personally thank Rena Reiser for originally requesting this topic. If you have one that you'd like to see 2020 addressed, get in touch. Don't make me guess what you want. Take a page out of Rena's book and let me know. And again, thank you, Rena. Okay, that's enough gratitude. Because the most important thing you're going to do today is lean forward and start taking notes so we can start stacking money that we haven't been getting. And our guest today, Michelle Novak from Presslaff Interactive, is just the lady to help us find it. She's here today to show us a unique approach to growing audience and creating new revenue. And that's what we're all about. Michelle, welcome.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks for everybody for joining today. Appreciate your time.
And if people look at her biography and see that she's from Connecticut, she's not. She's cheating. She's in Miami today. So anyway, we won't talk about the differences in the weather. But the first order of business right now is for Michelle and me to shift control of your screens over thousands of miles of internet. As we do this, please remember the best 2020 sessions are driven by your questions. And I know Michelle really wants to respond to your questions and try to help you with your specific needs. So don't forget to use that dashboard to shoot us those questions and thoughts. If you have a question that doesn't get answered, it's going to be because you were too shy to ask it. Okay, Michelle, you ready to roll?
I am ready. Thank you again so much.
It's all yours.
Well, thank you, everybody. We are here to talk about making email your #1 revenue tool. And as Bob mentioned, I'm Michelle Novak. I'm the manager of client sales and service at Presslaff Interactive. And for those of you who may not be familiar with our company, we provide both the strategy and the platform for media companies specifically. We work specifically with media companies to build and monetize their email databases through data unification, contesting, surveying, and email marketing. And we want to talk about growing your email revenue and how you can make anywhere from $100,000 to over $650,000 this year if you put a laser focus on the things we talk about today. And the big reveal in this, and the thing we've gotten such great feedback on when we've shared this elsewhere, is that we're going to talk to you about specifically pricing these things. We're always asked, how do I sell this? What do I sell it for? And so we've got some suggestions and ranges for you there. So in my agenda today, we're going to go through 5 things. One, a quick review on email, some stats and trends that will be useful for you as you start selling this and understanding the power of it. Also, pricing and packaging your email products, the strategies for selling it, and strong advertising categories to target that work really well for email marketing. Also, building to make sure you keep your database, that email list, robust and you don't burn out your audience. So talking about building, burning, and churning. And then the focus you need to make your program successful. You can have an email list, but unless you work it, it's not going to work for you. So let's get talking about email. You're here because you believe that there's power and value in it. And so whether you've been doing it for a long time or you're just getting started, I'm going to paraphrase Mark Twain and say the reports of the death of email have been greatly exaggerated. And while it's definitely changing and evolving with data, segmentation, and automation, it's actually becoming even more powerful. It's like the old lady of the digital world, but it's really one of the strongest opportunities. Marketers continue to rank email among their most effective marketing tools. 73% of marketers agree that it's core to their business. Those are the people that are your advertisers, they think it's critical, you can deliver a unique audience to them and send their emails. Email is 40 times more powerful than Facebook and Twitter combined at building relationships and generating revenue. And we love social media, and it has a place and a role in your audience relationships and helping you grow your email database. But one of the reasons we continue to focus on email is because the revenue and the relationship potential for you is huge, and we just see it working over and over and over. It's also really valuable to consumers. 1 in 5 people say that they read every email they receive just to see if there's relevant content for them. So they are ready to read what you send. And of course, like you, they're reading it on their device. Email is the #1 thing people do on their smartphones, and we'll talk a little bit more about mobile later. And it's why email is such a huge opportunity, because that's where people are spending their time. So how do you maximize that potential? I'm going to show you different kinds of email campaigns with some guidelines on how to price them, and that pricing really has to be based on what your market will bear, thinking about how it matches pricing for your other products. And with our clients, we always sit down and review and help determine specific rates. So you want to look through this, think about the products that you're going to sell and what those correct rates are for you. The first question we often get asked is to CPM or not to CPM, and our recommendation is not to do CPM. There are certainly exceptions to that, but you're not going to get as much value out of it as if you do selling email as a flat rate and packaging them with your other products. So coming up with flat rates for the types of email campaigns that you sell versus the CPM. And I mentioned packaging. We think the best strategy is to package it with your other products. But please, please, please do not make email a value-added element of your sales. It should be, if it is a new offering for you, we know the drill with your sales team. It's a new product. If it's a standalone product, it won't be nearly as successful as one that can be packaged in to add dollars to the sale. Those AEs already have plenty of items on their menu, so just adding that email to the package, allowing you to tap into those digital budgets. Think about how you're going to package that, and we'll talk about some ways to package that a little bit later as well. I'm going to segue into 8 different types of emails and the revenue you can produce, and what you'll see is a low and a high end. On the low end, it may mean smaller market, or it might mean a smaller database, and on the high end is kind of the top of the market pricing we see. And these pricing ranges are based on information from clients that we have in markets of all sizes selling this, with lists of all sizes. And you'll see some examples from all different media types. So let's start with the one that's probably the richest and most lucrative opportunity. We always refer to it kind of as your savings and special offers list. These are the dedicated emails that you send to your audience who specifically opted in to say, yeah, it's okay to send me emails on behalf of your advertisers. Of course, it's not worded quite that way, but they want to receive savings and special offers for you. And you've got a great audience you can reach on behalf of your advertisers. There's a lot of value to it for you, for your advertiser, and for that audience. So one of the questions I often get is how often you want to send these types of emails, and that really is a local market decision. We see people doing as few as 1 a month, which is probably not enough, certainly to maximize the opportunity and revenue, and you're missing opportunity. Others are sending multiples in a day, which is probably a little bit too often unless there's a lot of segmentation and targeting of that list going on. So if we talk about pricing, the low end about $250 per email, and on the high end $1,500 per email campaign. So let's average it out and say you're doing 3 times a week. Your potential on the low end, if you're doing it at $250, is as much as $23,000 a year, or over $200,000 annually. And of course, you're probably not going to be sold out all year, and your pricing and your send frequency is going to fall somewhere in the middle. But the bottom line is there is a ton of money in emails on behalf of advertisers. If you're looking to build an email list and figure out how to monetize it, this is absolutely one of those that you should be planning to add or be doing or spending more time leveraging and growing that list if you're already doing it a little bit. Another approach is emails on behalf of advertisers, but more of a newsletter where it's multi-sponsor advertiser offers. And you'll see an example here from radio. I've seen newspapers that will take some of the ads that are in their paper and combine them all into an email and send multiple different offers in an individual email. And in this example, there's 4 sponsors here. So if on the low end you are charging an advertiser, one of those 4 advertisers, $150, or on the high end, $750, the potential for that is really as much as $150,000 a year if you were doing this kind of an email with 4 sponsors weekly. Another type of sponsored email that's a great approach for categories where there's high interest in your market or you have a specific product. A dedicated content newsletter with a sponsor where the sponsor is prominently featured. It could be the weekend entertainment guide, a health and fitness newsletter, a real estate newsletter, home and garden, recipes. Those are just a few of the ones that we've seen that always have high open rates and are of high interest. And I'm thinking in the world of native, if you're doing native, think about the categories where you're selling lots of native, where you've got great content that you can be repurposing, getting those sponsor dollars, adding more sponsor dollars to that, and creating a newsletter focused on that topic. So what could those dollars look like? For a weekly newsletter, you're looking at about $6,000 to almost $50,000 if you're talking about sponsorships in the $500 to $4,000 range. And those are ranges that we see that are very realistic. The great thing about that is you can be doing multiple different newsletters in different category types. So you could have a health and fitness newsletter and a home and garden newsletter, each having a different sponsor and really multiplying the revenue opportunity. And giving people those choices, I want to receive this, I want to receive that. So nobody's all in for everything or all out. Give them the choices of what they want to be receiving from you. Many of you are doing these daily headlines, whether it's sports or business news or just news content. And while there's opportunity for ad units within them, we find that it's often not sold because there's just not a ton of revenue potential there for someone to go out and specifically sell that. Yet it can really drive great incremental revenue, and it's the perfect packaging opportunity where perhaps you're selling it, inclusion in that email is an upsell to a banner ad, or in addition to a very comprehensive advertising campaign, an annual buy that you're doing for a client, including them in the emails throughout the course of the year. And you're providing a lot of additional impressions for them and adding dollars to your bottom line. So these are great if you can sell them monthly, quarterly, annually. Low end, $495 per sponsor per month. On the high end, $1,500. You could be looking at as much as $54,000 annually by having that ad within the newsletter that you're already sending out. Similarly, weekly newsletter advertising, and probably in a lot of your cases, you are sending out that once a week kind of news headlines recap, or you might be doing a business newsletter or a sports recap. So again, generating valuable impressions for a client, packaging it in, and low end, again, get them to sponsor that because it's a very targeted, weekly newsletter, $1,000 a month. On the high end, $4,200. So your range is anywhere from $14,000 to $50,000. Geo-targeting. One of the things you'll hear Ruth Presslaff, the president of our company, talk about a lot is zip codes, because zip codes are just a gold mine. And that's just one of the ways to segment your database and send relevant campaigns and help make more money. Every one of your advertisers has a trading zone, a radius from which they draw their customers. And instead of blasting, which is a banned word in our world, there's no such thing as an email blast, but an email campaign that is targeted to the right audience within the right radius of a particular advertiser's business. In that case, you're doing both your advertiser and your audience a great service because you're hitting just the right people, the people that are most likely to become their customers. And we see the open rates on these kind of zip code targeted emails always super strong. We know that they're effective. And when you're doing zip code targeting, you can actually be sending more than one campaign in a day if you're separating out those geographic areas. And it really doesn't matter what the market size is. Small market, large market, you've got communities. People shop in their area. So being able to do that, in a mid-sized market, we saw a newspaper that was doing this pretty regularly, and they made $40,000 in ad revenue in 1 year just in the zip code targeting of emails. So again, you've got opportunities on the low end and on the high end to make anywhere from $15,000 to over $90,000. The birthday email is such a fantastic relationship builder. If you are collecting date of birth at the time of registration, you can be sending emails, and in many email platforms, certainly in our email platform, it will automatically send an email to people based on that date of birth. It's a, set it up once and don't touch it again until you've sold yet another advertiser into it. This is a great one to sell annually. You're going to put in that free gift, quote unquote, to your reader on behalf of your sponsor who's paying you money to have that opportunity to drive traffic through their doors. So you're going to get credit from your audience for remembering them on their birthday while you're making money at the same time. And we've seen clients, there's actually a newspaper in Indiana who's sold as many as 6 or 7 sponsors into their birthday email at any one time. So let's say we're averaging it out at 4 sponsors sold annually. You have the potential to be anywhere from $8,000 to $36,000 on an email that does, really builds that relationship, makes you an important and valued newspaper, a part of their life. Contest follow-up. A lot of you are doing contesting, enter to win types of things, or surveys and collecting more data. And those entrants are the ones that are most likely to be interested in that advertiser's product. So sending the offer that encourages them to become a customer is good value for the contestant, the person who participated, and turns what used to be just a plain old sponsorship, associate that advertiser with the contest, into a real lead generating tool for your advertiser. A lot of times these emails tend to be attributed dollars because it's part of the entire contest package, which is perfect, but there are some additional upsell opportunities post-contest. We've got one, couple of clients actually, but one market I'm thinking of where they do a lot of kind of on-site events or expos. They sell the opportunity to send sponsored emails to those who registered at the event. So it's relevant to the attendees, those follow-up emails on behalf of the advertiser, for the ones that were at the home show or that wedding expo and had entered the contest, stuffed their little thing into that ballot box or entered the contest digitally online with you. It produces results for the client because that's the right audience of people. They were at that event. They're looking to improve their home or they're planning to get married. So it can really produce results for that client. And again, additional revenue for you. It could be $100 per email up to $500 per email. You may sell them and think about selling them over a period of time. You did some kind of a Father's Day furniture store lazy boy recliner giveaway. Great, you're going to send that immediate email back on behalf of that furniture store, but plan out some campaigns throughout the course of the year where you're reaching those people again on behalf of that advertiser and add the dollars to your bottom line. So let's say you added it all up. Everything in the low end that we just looked at, you were selling all of those, $130,000. If you added everything up on the high end, we're talking over $675,000. And as I said before, I know you're not going to sell all these products and you're probably not going to be sold out all the time, but this is how email can be your #1 revenue tool. There are so many different ways to make money. So once you've defined the opportunity and identified the right products for you to be selling, how do you go about it? I'll just reinforce again, please no value added. So whether you're selling those emails individually or packaging them, make sure you're attributing revenue to that email marketing line. Your advertisers have a separate digital budget, so this is how you can tap into that without shifting those dollars away from the print budget. It may seem obvious, but I hear this a lot. There's not an actual sales sheet for email that can be slotted into a package of sales materials that an AE is putting together. So make sure you're creating those sales materials for them to be able to include that and show the value of it and talk about the size of your list or the data and the demographic profile of the people that you're sending those advertisers to. Be sure you've created that one sheet. I mentioned attribution. This is a great way to do that when you're doing packages. This happens to be a contest for a TV station. They're noting, we're going to include you in these emails and send a dedicated one, and each of those things is worth X dollars. So they've put dollar figures next to each of those elements that are part of that package to really show the value of each of those components. Nothing ends up in the value added bucket. You've mapped out your product, your pricing, and your packaging. Which advertisers are the best targets? Well, we've got a number of different categories that we see, particularly kind of focused on these special offer emails, those dedicated advertiser emails, in healthcare and recruitment and furniture and home services, real estate, automotive, tickets and events, education, and certainly there are more. But I've got a few examples here and some reasons why we've seen these work so well. Healthcare, that is lead generation in so many cases. It's the, click to come to our seminar, or click or call here to make an appointment. So we get great feedback from our clients who are doing these things on behalf of the different medical areas, inviting people to the open houses at the new retirement homes. All of those things can really drive a great call to action and produce results for those advertisers. So healthcare is one area to focus on. Recruitment, this is effective and can help recapture some of those classified dollars. Go after dollars that are being spent on Monster and LinkedIn, etc. If you're hosting job fairs, be sure you're packaging in email campaigns for those companies that are part of that job fair. So look at recruitment advertising. And in emails, just a new way for you to be helping businesses find new employees while you're adding dollars to your bottom line. Furniture stores, this is a great one for bundling. Think about the print schedule that you already have that's driving people to a particular sales event, the President's Day mattress sale. Add in an email that you send out on the Friday or Saturday of that weekend, reminding people to shop and take advantage of the sale. So you've got the sale that you're doing and that you may be familiar with. It's including those those print ads, and now you can add email to it to help make them more effective. Home services. We have a big revenue sales promotion called the Virtual House, where advertisers have found that the follow-up email campaigns after people have engaged in that online promotion, that online contest, are a huge way for them to have found qualified people who are in the market for getting lawn care service or getting their furnace cleaned. Those are really valuable to drive those new customers. If I were an AE in a market, I'd take a look at the Valpak or the Clipper magazines that are in your marketplace. That's all that home, category, and target those advertisers, bring those in. They may have those smaller dollars that they can be spending with you over a period of time if they're not maybe currently a traditional print client, and you can start bringing new advertisers in and getting those dollars from those other sources. Home developments and real estate. In one market, we know this is a six-figure category for them. They're making 6 figures on just that home developments, real estate, the new communities that are being developed in their area. So if you've got that going on, great opportunity for you. Automotive, and that means dealerships and other automotive categories. Tire stores, the car washes, the oil change places, any of those that are related to, I just recently had my some work done on my car at the Midas Muffler Shop, ended up on their email list. I get an email about once a week, and just saw one this morning before getting on this webinar, saying, hey, we've got the snowstorm coming because, as Bob mentioned, I live in the Northeast. We're supposed to get hammered this weekend. And they were sending out that email directly from Midas, reminding me, do I need a tune-up? Do I need my tires? Whatever it is. You can be doing those kinds of email campaigns on behalf of the advertisers too, because when Midas sends it out, they're only reaching the people in their list. When they work with you, they can reach the people on your list and broaden the exposure and the people that can be part of that campaign. So one example there, just from my own experience, but we see a lot of automotive-related email campaigns. Tickets and events. Anybody who sells tickets of any kind is the perfect way to drive those sales. and you've got the click-throughs on that buy button, that you're able to show how you've got those metrics. The great thing about email, those metrics to show how effective you were for them. And education, last one here, it's great for any kind of local educational institutions, whether it's the private schools or higher ed. It'll drive people to those open houses or to register for more information about a specific program, especially if you can target to the relevant audience who in the past have expressed interest, or if you've got some kind of third-party data, or through this, surveying of your audience, you found out these are the people with school-aged kids. So educational institutions, great place for you to look at getting email dollars. Those are just a few of the categories that we see producing results in so many areas. I'd love to hear from any of you that are doing this, in the chat. Are there other categories where you've had great success in your marketplace? We'd love to hear about that. I mentioned earlier about mobile and the fact that we're all reading emails on our devices. And part of the effectiveness of your email campaigns, once you've sold that email, is making sure that they look good. And look at this stat and think about your own behavior. If an email doesn't look good on your phone or on your mobile device, on your iPad, you're going to hit delete. They did a survey. 70% of consumers delete emails immediately that don't render well on their mobile device. So that's part of why we've been saying for years, even before mobile was dominant, your emails need to have a balance of text and graphics so that they're effective no matter where they're read. And we'll get into responsive design in a moment, but thinking about how those emails look and render on those phones is really critical. And actually, this is probably the one area where we've helped our print clients really make that shift from slapping a big JPEG that's a replica of the print ad into an email, into learning how to do effective emails that reflect the messaging that's in that print ad, but are going to be more effective in an email.
Michelle?
Yeah.
Hey, remember I said some of these sessions get questions and some of them just lay there? Girl, you got questions. Yes. You got questions. Okay.
So tell me, what can we answer?
I'm just actually, I wanted to give you a little bit of a rest there. But one just came up, and I wanted to, and I noticed it, and it seems like it's timely for the slides that you're on. Are you going to address subject lines and how what works there and what doesn't?
I am not in this webinar. Certainly, we've done others where we focus a little bit more about the content in those emails, and if that person wants to reach out to me specifically afterwards, happy to talk to them a little bit about that.
Okay, yeah.
But the key of subject lines is, I could just speak to a really broad general on subject lines, that you need to keep them relatively short, because when you think about, again, looking at them on mobile devices, you're only seeing a portion of them. You want to make sure that they have kind of the most powerful and impactful words toward the beginning of the subject line. And that really is, between the subject line and who the email is from, one of the most important reasons, besides the fact that it looks good on your mobile device, reasons why people open an email. So it is really critical, just like writing the headlines in the newspaper or the captions under the photos. It's probably the area you have to spend the most time focusing on before you hit the send key.
Okay, I've got a bunch more here, but I think I'll let you get through to the end, and then we can address them going back, or I'm going to have you bouncing all over the place. But
no problem.
We talked. Michelle and I were talking earlier about the fact that we respect your time, so we want to make sure we get as concise a product here as we possibly can. But there are questions out there, and we want more. So don't let that dissuade anyone from participating in this. The best sessions are the ones with the most questions. So please ask away. Michelle, go right ahead.
We were talking about the responsive design and how important mobile is, and so you want to make sure that your emails are mobile friendly and that your clients know that you're delivering mobile ready content. So make sure that that's part of what you're bragging about, assuming that you're doing that. And in our platform, we've got super easy responsive design, WYSIWYG templates, and I know a lot of the email platforms out there do that. It's really important to be using those, leveraging that, and testing your emails when you're creating them and getting ready to send them, because most likely you're building them on a desktop and you're looking at them on your desktop or your laptop. So make sure that you do some testing. Send it to your phone, or the people in your organization who are doing it, sending it to their phone, or if you have a tablet in the office, make sure that you're looking at them in all those places to make sure that they're looking good and are effective. It's equally important that the landing page, you're putting a call to action in there. You want people to click through and take some action on your client's site. Making sure that if they're landing on a page, that it looks good, so that they have a good experience, and it's great if they click through, but if they don't make the buy, if they don't set that appointment because the page that they land on doesn't work well on that mobile device, you only helped them halfway, or they only helped themselves halfway. So I know you can't always control what the advertiser's site looks like, but talking about making sure that the page that you're pointing them to is easy for someone to use on a device is really important as well. And frankly, responsive design and good email content is a whole other webinar. But like I said, mobile. Think about mobile as you're creating your campaigns. Building, burning, and churning. So this is all about your list building and data collection and segmentation and targeting. And that's about the long-term health of your email program. Lists churn at about a 30% rate a year, just in terms of people changing email addresses, etc. So you need to be constantly building it, and we're going to talk about some of those ways. This is a great quote that talks about, the behavioral data associated with it is incredibly valuable, and that helps you start thinking differently about your email data and the kinds of campaigns that you send. So as you're building those lists, getting data, additional data besides that email address is really important. I've just mentioned 25 to 30% of the average list churns annually. So you've essentially got a leaky bucket here. You constantly have to be growing your list and collecting more information on your people to continue to be effective. Unifying, and that's one thing that we really preach and work hard to do, is take all the places where you're collecting email addresses and bring them into one location. You're still going to be gathering email addresses from other platforms, or you may have data, third-party data from a partner that you've got that you can bring in and merge with this. But making sure that you don't have a whole bunch of buckets full of, or spreadsheets sitting around your organization with email addresses in it. Get them all into one place. It's so often overlooked. Be sure you're promoting registration on your website and that it's easy to find. It seems like a duh, but you're making changes, you're constantly evolving your website, and sometimes those things just get lost. So whether you've got a specific registration box, you've got real estate that are in house ads and banner positions on your site, just make a point to go back and check your site on at least a quarterly basis so that registration doesn't get lost. And even, the top example there, you'll see it's embedded within some of the news stories, encouraging people to sign up for the sports newsletter in the middle of the sports story. You're engaging with people in a whole lot of different places, certainly at those events, being able to have, tablets or something that people can register for your newsletters or participate in a contest and register for your newsletters at the same time. Your customer service reps talking to them on the phone, asking for an email address, asking if they'd like to receive information from you to keep them up to date on everything happening. Important to be doing that. And then Facebook and Twitter, using those as a way to drive the folks that you have maybe on those social networks into registering for your newsletters. Engaging the audience through contests serves two purposes. Certainly it grows your database, and it helps segment your audience. And integrating that all into one platform like we have is great. You can drive all your contest registration through that one place. But wherever you are, I talked about it before, you don't want to have those little buckets sitting elsewhere. Make sure that you're pulling all of that data together into one location. Of course, contests also offer some new revenue channels from the email, like I mentioned a little bit earlier as well. And you can't do a contest once and think that, okay, there's my list. It really needs to be an ongoing process. And you can be making money doing these contests. All of these that you're seeing on the screen were sponsored by single or a variety of advertisers. So leverage building your list while you're making money and helping your clients as well.
Michelle, could I interrupt for a second on that previous slide? Could you go back to that?
I
Pretty
can.
okay. I want to draw our audience's attention to that upper right hand corner with that house breakout. Is there anyone here who hasn't sold the heck out of some version of that already? That's when you're already selling, and it's just a hop, skip, and a jump to the kind of the engagement process that Michelle's talking about here. But I look at that, I get sentimental for those center spreads we used to sell with that house breakout. I'm sorry, I just get emotional about that, Michelle.
No, it's funny because that is the virtual house I mentioned earlier, where that is a web page on your website, and each of the rooms is sponsored by a different advertiser. And when people click to enter the prize the sponsor has made available, they can be registering for your database at the same time, also opting in for more information from that advertiser, so you're generating leads as well. But it is one of those things that almost every newspaper I talk to, when they see this, as part of a turnkey program that we offer our clients, they said, we've always done that in print, but this is great. Now we're actually going to be able to collect data. We're going to learn more. We're going to make it more interactive and more engaging because people are coming to your site, clicking on a room where they have some interest, whether it's the car dealership in the garage or the fencing company along in the yard. It just kind of takes that campaign that you've had success with for so long and adds a new level to it, adds new dollars to it. Surveying, we talked a little bit about the surveying and talking about that contest specifically, but whether you're doing surveys that are specific to an advertising category, the Courier one that's right there in the middle, just the logo from them, was about their readership and the digital awareness that they have. The Get Smart one from the Elkhart Truth was all about education and employment and what kind of job you have and what you're interested in. And so pulling all of that information together in that one location and being able to leverage that and say, hey, our audience looks like this. We know this about them. They've engaged with us, and we have permission to email them so we can reach those people on your behalf. So ways to grow your list through surveys, whether you're doing them in partnership with an advertiser or doing them for yourselves, helping you collect that data. Third-party data, it's really the next evolution of information to be pulled into your database, and we've got some partners that can append information to first-party data. But think about the lucrative opportunities you've got in targeting homeowners or targeting just the parents in the audience. Being more relevant, thus making your email campaigns more successful. And when you're using all of that data to segment, target, and send campaigns, that's the way that you can stop from burning out your list, is making sure you're sending the right information to the right people based on who they are and what you know about them. It's all about being relevant, targeting that audience, using all that unified data. That's going to produce the greatest results for your clients and have a stronger database for you to sell. The last element here is about the focus. We've done all the work to develop your strategy and figure out pricing and packaging and identify the right categories, unify your database. But as I said at the top, the focus is the key to making email your #1 revenue tool. You, as a manager, need to put focus on this initiative for your company. You can have the tools and you can have the data, but without that focus, you can't hit the numbers. And we get this question all the time too. Is it a full-time job? Well, that'd be great if you had one person who could focus on this all the time, but it's certainly not realistic, and most of our clients have one person in their organization who kind of owns this, who's passionate about it, who believes it. Identify that person and appoint them to own that responsibility and get back to you with the right information, know who that audience is, and championing that within your organization. So who is that person? What do they look like? It really doesn't matter what department they're in. You just need someone who understands email, gets and likes data, thinks creatively and strategically, collaborates well, because it's going to touch a lot of different departments within the paper, and can and will devote the time to manage the program. You need to have that champion, and when you find them, they need to be empowered to make recommendations and be someone your staff will listen to, and that you've made it clear to your staff that that person is empowered. But they also need to be accountable for stated goals. And that might be database growth, newsletter growth, data acquisition, improving open rates, and taking and reporting that information back to the key management. Look at where you're at now, set yourself some targets, and start going for it when you've got that person to really own this. So I talked about the 5 steps. Some takeaways hopefully that you've gotten is that email really does continue to dominate the digital space, and there's lots of money to be made, and that you want to think about packaging this into ongoing sales initiatives. Don't make this a new, thing. Make this a new valuable part of the things that you're selling. It requires a strategy for doing it, and you have to have that focus. You need that champion, because the bottom line is that there's lots of dollars to add to your bottom line. And we normally will, end with some great quote from Seth Godin or stats from BIA, Kelsey, or Burrell. But in this case, I just want to say, quote Nike and say, go just do it, and see if there's a way that we can help. Fire away with those questions, Bob.
Thank you, Michelle. And okay, let's see how to best put these in order. Some of you, if I ask your question out of order, it doesn't mean I skipped your first one. I'm just trying to tie some of these together. One question that comes up here is, how big does your list have to be? If you've accumulated all this stuff, how much critical mass do you need to get started?
I often hear people say, we don't have any emails, and then I say, well, do you have some here? Do you have some there? So you do definitely need to think about where you maybe have been collecting them within the organization. Go back to the chart in here that showed all those different sources and aggregate them together. But the size has really been irrelevant. I swear to God, had one newspaper that had 0 from the day that we got started, and they started making money by doing some of this, lead generation contesting that we talked a little bit about in the contesting section. So they were building their list kind of on the backs of their advertisers while they were helping those advertisers. That's probably a rare circumstance, but we certainly have clients who have 2,500 to 5,000 that are doing it and making money because they're in a smaller market or they've just gotten started. And we have clients that have 40, 50, 60,000 email addresses. So it doesn't have to be big. It just, you put the focus on it and you start collecting the right data and you build a strategy. You can be making money with a list of any size.
Okay, and that gets me to another question we have, and I'm going to kind of paraphrase your question here, Tom. That if I miss the target, redirect me and I'll fix it. But I think we all have a real comfort with CPM. That's something that we can intellectually say, okay, that's why this costs this. But with something new like this, Michelle, I think we have a reluctance to just put a number on it if we can't somehow document why that number is the right number. How would you go about setting a price, especially say for a product like the guys who were building their list on the back of their advertisers? What's the rationale for the pricing?
I think probably a lot of newspapers do start with the notion of the CPM based on the size of their list and say, okay, our list is X and our CPM is Y, and so here's the flat rate for this. It is pretty rare that we see people doing it on a CPM basis. It does become that flat rate, and there's a little bit of science to it, thinking about what you're charging for other elements and getting a little bit of a gut check as to what feels right. So if you've got a real comfort level with CPM, you might want to find that number, kind of figure out the CPM, and then just add that flat rate. You might want to keep selling on CPM, but we've seen the most success with people who identify a rate that seems to work and has a comfort level, and go from there.
Would you say, and I think, because I think the mindset is, from day one, we've been all about reach. The more you tell, the more you sell, and we're all about reach. And when we start, and as much as we like to talk about selling audience, the thing that we sometimes don't realize is, if we have 20 names, but those 20 names are brides who are going to be married within the next 9 months, that's a very valuable list. Right?
And that's going to get you more business than having, being able to target an email to those people on behalf of the florist is going to probably drive more business than, an ad that might be in print that's reaching a larger group of people because it's the right group of people. And
Exactly.
That's why when we talk about packaging, it's so valuable to be able to think about the small number, because the small number is going to be your email database probably. But when you've got the data around it and you can really target and send that most relevant messaging, you're going to produce significant results.
Okay. Uh, I have a question here from another lady also named Michelle. Uh, okay, and Michelle, did uh, did that answer your question about CPM as well, and Tom as well too? And I'm trying to juggle a bunch of different questions here, but the reason that you don't recommend selling CPM is simply because that detracts from the real value of the audience, because the numbers don't really tell the story, right, Michelle?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about impressions on a website and you're talking about, tens of thousands, that's really a different thing than targeting an email to the right group of people. And so I do think that when you're trying to compare those two things, it definitely detracts, as you noted.
Okay,
That's a
got
good
it.
way to look at it.
Um, okay, let's see. Okay, we may bounce back and forth here, but I want to get back to the top of the list so I make sure I cover everything here. There's some question about mass email clients that they can utilize. Uh, you know, the names come up: Mailchimp or SendMail. Currently, our this publisher uses PHP List, which is free. He was wondering if there were any other free options out there, and what your experience has been with that.
Um, I'm not familiar with them. I mean, I know that like a MailChimp and a Constant Contact, uh, depending upon your list size, those are free. It might be good if you're just getting started. I always think you're getting what you pay for, and if you're looking to build your strategy and develop that and make sure you've got great sender reputation and can integrate all of your different um, email lists into one place and make sure you're CAN spam compliant, there's a lot of money here. I wouldn't be afraid to spend some money in order to make all that money by using the right product. I'm not aware of anything that's free besides those, couple that based on the size of a small list can be no charge.
Okay, okay. Okay, who are your clients with best practices on the production of newsletters and that sort of thing? And I think the collateral sales material he's talking about. He says it sounds like it's, and I think maybe you may have addressed this toward the end there when you were talking about who was the person, but it sounds like it's a full-time job to be creating all that email copy and all of that. Is do you and all and beyond just harvesting the email? Again, I'm paraphrasing here and trying to pull this all together. How much of that?
Yeah,
I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Michelle.
no, I was going to say, I can't think of any client we have, one, that has a person who's dedicated on behalf of their four different newspapers really to their email databases. And that does include, the email contesting and surveying, so it's more than just email. And they've got designers who are building graphics for them. I think it doesn't have to be onerous to create them if you've got different WYSIWYG templates. I was talking about those, click here, type in your copy, click here, upload your image. It doesn't have to take you a long time to build these emails. If you can afford to hire a full-time person, you're going to make a lot of money by putting that focus on it. I just don't see it. It becomes a responsibility of that champion I was talking about, who's in your organization, that believes in it, gets it, and can have that be part of their day-to-day.
Got it. I think what it is, people aren't accustomed to hearing. You have to have an evangelist, and it's not a full time job. Those two, it's. But what you're saying is, if you have a true believer who's really committed, there's nothing here that just eats up an entire week for them.
Again, the potential's there that it could. It's just the practicality of today's environment where everybody wears multiple hats in every
Mm-hmm.
organization. Having, not having an evangelist means it's not going to work for you. So whether that's a full-time person or whether that's another responsibility that someone in your organization has, the key thing is that you have someone who's responsible for it and has a focus on it, knows the data, can answer the questions almost off the top of their heads as to how many people you have in the database and some of the demographic profiles and what your open rate averages are. That person who just kind of, knows it better than everybody else and believes in it.
Okay. Question here, and I think, okay, I assume the emails we gather are never given to the client, or are they sold? I assume that's the list proprietary, right?
Yeah, in the instances of some of those lead generating contests and campaigns, there are questions, would you like XYZ business to contact you for more information? And if people specifically opt in, which is going to be, a small percentage in some cases, they're larger in others, of the people who maybe participate or engage. But in general, would I take your list of people that you've built and hand it over to anybody else? No, because it's going to, splash back on you from the standpoint of those people know they shared their email address with you, and now they're starting to hear from somebody else. So I think unless you're asking a specific question in a specific context, like one of those contests, and they say yes, you're going to make more money by doing the work on behalf of your advertiser, not handing over your people to them.
Okay, we've got it. Now, okay, Rick, does Michelle have any layout examples of the emails that go out? I'm not quite sure what Rick's asking for.
There, actually, if we go back here in terms of, let's see if I can get back there fast enough. Each one of these sections of the, whether it's an education or tickets and events, all of these are emails that are from newspapers, radio, TV stations that we work with. So some different campaigns in here. And, if I look at this one on the right, which is a little bit more complex one, when I talk about the balance of text and images, so the Americips homes, there's a big image at the top, but there's some copy right above that. There's copy in the middle. There's some more images. There's a big button with the, discover the difference, the way to click through. And that can be done in a WYSIWYG template where it's, again, upload the image, type your text here, upload some pictures here, type in text there. You might want to bold some things, change some colors and some fonts. But the types of, templates that are out there in our platform, certainly in others, where you can do this, have them look different because of things like images and fonts, etc., but have the same layout that is going to be effective and work well in mobile and on desktop, is really important.
Oh.
But if you are sharing this deck, Bob, somebody can take a look at some of these.
Okay, I was just going to suggest and Rick's a 2020 veteran. He knows it's a 50-50 chance we'll actually come up with a usable recording of this. But if we do, it'll be up there. Then they can check that, or again, be in touch with Michelle, and she can talk to you a little more in specifics about things like.
Yeah, happy to do so.
Okay, we have some questions about the CAN spam regulations and how to stay in compliance.
Making sure, CAN spam, interestingly, it means you can spam people under these conditions. I don't recommend that you're spamming people, but the conditions are that you have a active reply to email address. So if someone hits reply to an email that they get, then it goes back to someone who reads it. That you have an unsubscribe link in every email that you send, and that you have your physical street address. Those are really the three key things that you need to make sure you're doing. If you're working with a good partner, the email provider that you're working with, like in our case, we hard code that stuff in so that it's automatically there. When you build any emails, you can't accidentally forget about it. Having those three things are the ways to stay in compliance, primarily with the CAN Spam Act.
Okay, and I've never had to do this before, but I got to cut off the questions because, again, as we said, we respect your time, and we're getting close to an hour here. But this last question, you talked about segmentation. What data is most useful to collect? How many questions can you ask when you have people sign up?
Stats that I've seen in terms of how many registration questions you can ask, after about 7, things start falling off. I think that just asking for email address is a huge mistake, that you need to be asking for more than that. So for most of our clients, we recommend that you're asking for that date of birth, zip code, and gender, because there's a lot of demographic targeting you can do just with those things. So part of your basic registration includes those. And the date of birth, another good reason for doing that, asking month, day, and year, besides the birthday email we looked at as a revenue opportunity, is there's a separate law about, that's the COPPA Act, where you can't emailing anyone under the age of 13, you have very specific regulations. Just you probably are not going to run across it, but just don't even go there. Make sure that you're only emailing to people who are over the age of 13, and you will only know that if you're asking about that date of birth.
Got it. Got it. I'll tell you, you want to take it to the slide with your email address and contact information on it again, so folks have it, because I really want to thank you for your generosity and your time today to try to help make this a little more accessible for us. And again, if you have any questions for Michelle or me, don't hesitate to reach out with them. Michelle, I'm going to take this screen back for a second, because we do next month. We have another topic that we haven't touched on before. And if you were with us in San Antonio, or you may have met Hal Marion or Michelle Ross or Mary Jo Birch from Time Shamrock Creative Services. They have an interesting take on the idea of outsourcing your ad composition. And I know, if you've been around long enough, most of us have heard that song before. But a couple of things they talked about really stood out to me. Not the least of which was that with them, it's not an all or nothing approach. You can keep your existing team and just use the Shamrock system for overflow and special projects, or just have them do your spec ads if your existing team's having trouble getting those out. And I'm not so certain that some of the questions about production on the emails and things like that couldn't be answered there too. But that's a question for Hal next month. But it might very well be worth a listen to February's 2020. Now, most of you, either by now or at some point later today, are going to receive your edition of IFPA's new 2020 Publisher Desktop email newsletter. You're getting 2 of these per month now. And at the end of the current newsletter is a link you can use today for early registration for February. So you can knock all that out today. Be looking for that. And please give us your feedback on Publisher Desktop. And when you get an opportunity, give us your feedback on sessions like this one, because we like to know. Feedback is the breakfast of champions. And we like to know what we're doing well and how we can serve you better. But in the meantime, this is Bob Munn speaking for Michelle Novak and the entire IFPA Board of Directors, saying the future doesn't start tomorrow. It begins right now, this minute, with whatever you plan to do today. There's still plenty of time today to make some money for your customers, and you are just the folks to do it. Have a great day, everyone, and thanks for stopping by.